Hey guys, this is Dan in Connecticut calling. Love the show. So many years ago, one of my best friends in the world was getting married, and my friend in this case is a woman. She asked me to be in her wedding party, and I said, sure, but I get to do all the other bridesmaid stuff, right? She said, yeah. So I'm going to the bachelorette weekend. It's down in Florida. I fly into Orlando Airport. I land, and the person who's supposed to pick me up sends me a text. She says, hey, got a late start. I'm not going to be there for another hour, but just there's a cool bar in the hotel that's attached to the airport. Go grab a beer, and I'll pay for your drinks as a sorry. So I go and I do that. Walk into the bar. I sit down next to, no joke, Charles Barkley. I'm sitting next to Chuck. I didn't even realize it's him until I look over and I'm like, oh my God, that's Charles Barkley. So he's getting a drink. I offer to buy one. He goes to the bartender and he goes, let me get a vodka splash of cranberry, but just a splash. Nothing's wrong with my prostate. So he gets a couple of those. I just have like a beer or two. We're sitting, we're watching Celtics Lakers. It's incredible. He's just yapping at the TV. I have him sign. I still have it. A hotel bar napkin that says Charles Barkley on it. Anyway, the game's about over. He's getting ready to leave. He says, ain't no women in this mother effer. And he's going to leave. And as soon as he says that, I have a conundrum. I'm like, do I tell Charles Barkley that I'm on my way to a bachelorette party right now? And I wrestle with this for a while. And eventually I decide, yes, I do. And I say, Charles, Chuck, I know you're getting a car, but I'm on my way to a bachelorette party right now. And his eyebrows go up and he looks at me. And I'm like, I got to tell you, it's like a 45-minute ride away from here. And that when I said that, I lost him. He said, thanks, man. He gave me a slap on the back and left anyway. But I was that close to having a bachelorette weekend and having Charles Barkley come with me. Anyway, my question for you guys is, who do you think is the fourth best team in the Ivy after Cornell, Princeton, and Harvard? I'll hang up and listen.
I am Dan.
I'm Mike.
I'm Brett.
I'm Hayden. And this is Game Day. We're going to have some fun today because we are allowed to. So sit back, turn your brain off, and think back to a fishing cooler full of mini Gatorades, elbow pad tans, lot lizards, and an absolute war on Field 9 against the Scandinavian Sidewinders. We have call-ins from some folks in the lacrosse community you might know. We'll get to those in our Week 6 slate after the 80-second shot clock.
Magical moment in Easton, Pennsylvania this past Friday. Lafayette overcame a 3-goal halftime deficit to beat Army for the first time ever, 10-9. Doherty had 19 saves. I'll say it. Biggest upset in CLG history.
Creo! The fans cried out after the Handsome Boys hat-trick against Georgetown. Richmond beats the Swamp Dogs 14-10. Spiders are 6-0.
UMass beat Vermont 7-6. Don't look now, but the Gorillas are pounding their chests harder than Harambe. Zoomass has won 7 in a row.
Penn State made Cornell look like an Ivy League school. Lehman had 6 of their 19 goals. Nittany Lions win 19-7.
We used to call Holy Cross the purple punching bag of the Patriot League, and now they're crusading the conference. They beat Colgate, the defending champs, Saturday, 11-10.
High-quality lacrosse in Columbus this weekend between Ohio State and Notre Dame. The Irish strung together multiple comebacks to beat the Buckeyes 9-8. Luke Miller is playing like a Kavanaugh. He had 4.
Alex, the Roosta, Russo, became a household name Saturday night after his 9-point performance against Virginia. Towson won convincingly 13-9. Virginia looked and played like the traffic cones in their blinding orange kits.
Welcome back, folks. Fun episode for you today. We got call-ins, some funny ones, some serious ones. We'll try to take them all as seriously as possible. This is College Lacrosse Game Day. We're going to get right into call-ins as fast as possible before we catch in, but there's a lot to cover from this past week. A good slate this week. Not as good as the past 2 weeks, I'll just be honest. You know, the slate's a little down this week, but doesn't mean we're not going to have a great time on this episode and enjoy the Creators game, how we do every single week. So without further ado, let's listen to what the greater lacrosse community has to say about what's happening in our sport at the moment.
First guy we have is our buddy J-Rock, again traveling the world, but wants to check in on a pick he made and just talk some shop.
Hey, Rockefeller here. I'm checking in from 40,000 feet above Machu Picchu. First off, Army moneyline. Second off, I'm a little upset this week after learning most people don't have a 37-screen theater room and actually have to choose one Saturday noon game to watch. I'm calling out Big Lacrosse and you, Terry Foy. This just seems like a ploy for more InsideLacrosse.com refreshes and ad revenue. Let's spread these games out, fellas. Anyway, I'll let you boys break it down. My butler just put on some Chauvette highlights from their Virginia matchup.
The Butler loves Chauvette. That's been It's been going for years. We'd love to meet him someday and maybe have the Butler call in eventually.
Yeah.
J-Rock's Butler.
He seems like a lax rat.
It's a great take.
Yeah, it is.
It has everything you need.
It does. Terry Foy's coming right for you. Inside Lacrosse, are they a part of this whole, let's make all the games at noon and get everyone on our website?
Maybe.
I mean, it would make sense. I mean, hats off to Terry Foy if that's what's happening. If he's the one who's plotting all this and making all the games at noon, genius. You know, he might be with J-Rock pretty soon on an island somewhere if that's what's really happening.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's the case, but
Bold statement.
But if it were, I think they would make sure that the Inside Lacrosse website is a little more functional than it has been the last couple weeks.
Or maybe it should just keep sucking.
You know what the issue is with Inside Lacrosse? Like last year, right? It had its issues, right? Like, the ads and stuff like that. But it was a great website. Like, it had all the info on there. It had all the stats. It had every schedule from years past. It had high school schedules. It had high school commits, recruits. It had everything. And now they don't. And they still have the ads and stuff like that. They still have some of that stuff, but not all of it.
It's just hard to navigate now. You would think like people like me, Hayden, Dan, guys who are on it constantly would be able to navigate it. No, it's confusing to us too.
Right.
I would say
the one thing they had to fix was like the navigation on there and making it easier for users. And maybe like the new interface is like slightly easier to use, but they lost a ton of data on there. I don't know.
For sure.
Right, maybe you should build a website for them.
Maybe I should.
Yeah.
We're halfway there.
I mean,
worry.
how else are we going to find out about the Lars Tiffany lacrosse camp coming up this summer?
That's why we're doing it for you guys.
That's what I keep getting. He also said he talked about Army Moneyline. They play BU on Saturday at BU.
I couldn't tell if he was talking about the Army Moneyline last week, which was obviously a huge upset. But
I think
against BU, right? That line could be pretty close, and I think that goes on what Quint said a couple weeks ago. Like teams who are coming off a loss are just always hungrier. So
good teams coming off a bad loss, right? Usually it's a little bit of a wake-up call.
Army's a good team.
Oh, yeah.
I can't see them losing 2 in a row, but BU is a tough bounce-back game.
Yeah, it's given them some trouble the past couple of years. Before we move on to the next call, is this the biggest upset? The Army over Lafayette is the biggest upset in CLG history.
I didn't know that Lafayette had never beaten them before. Did not know that.
I could have guessed. But
Patriot League conference play?
I mean, yeah, mathematically, it's probably not the biggest upset ever. You look at spreads. Like, I don't know what the spread was for that game. I can't imagine it was over 10 goals. It's a conference game. It's not going to be an enormous spread. But
if you look
they
at
should
it,
not. Lafayette has no business winning that game.
The only thing holding me back from saying it's the biggest upset ever is that it's a Patriot League. Like shit like this happens all the time in the Patriot League, right? Which when I look at it, like it's not that big of an upset. It's a big upset, but.
From the other lens, Army was a top 10, number 8 ranked team in the country. Lafayette beat a top 10 team in the country, even though it is Army and it is Patriot League.
Yeah, maybe it is.
Perhaps. I mean, they don't have any like huge marquee wins this year, but some good ones. Let's move on.
Next, we have a call from Niche to Notable. Nick has been a presence. He's been making a boom, a splash in the lacrosse community as of recent. Go and follow him. He called in about a take on Duke.
Gentlemen, Niche here. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I want to talk about Duke for a second. So I'm looking at their schedule. They're 6-0. Now, they haven't beat anybody remotely good, in my opinion. They're going to beat Providence. They're going to beat Denver. Let's say they're 8-0 heading into March 28th. After that, they got a huge stretch of 5 games. Syracuse, Virginia, Cornell, Notre Dame, and North Carolina. Niche has a theory that Duke is going to lose all 5 of these games. They're going to end up going from 8-0 to 8-5. They're going to miss the tournament. Another abysmal season for Duke. Let me know if this is something that sparks your guys' interest as a potential meltdown for the rest of the year.
That's, look, I think that's the conversation around Duke right now, and it has been for the last couple of weeks. Like, how good are they really? Like, their out of conference schedule is like kind of mind blowing, right? Like, they didn't play a single Big Ten team. They didn't play a single Ivy League team, right, in their first 8 games of the year. Right, granted they have Denver on there, but that is kind of mind blowing. And maybe that's what Danowski wants to do. Get his guys ready for these big games. But they're about to face as Niche said, these 5 games after Providence and Denver, like they're gonna face some battle tested teams who have 4, 5, 6 top 20 games under their belt. Right, that's That's a big thing to consider. So I don't hate that take. I do think Duke's good this year, and I think they're capable of winning these games. Being battle tested is a huge asset to have. And if they're not battle tested until they're, more than halfway through the season, that's a little scary if I'm a Duke fan.
The only thing I would change is I think UVA goes 0-4 in ACC play. So that's a win. But they could easily lose to Cuse, Cornell, Notre Dame, and UNC, which would be a tough slide at the end of the year. And like you said, bunch of tomato. I don't like talking chip. Tomato cans is an expression that I would use for the out-of-conference schedule for Dukes.
Yeah.
You get a loss, like you lose to Denver, Cuse, and then you hit that rest of season schedule. That's tough.
Yeah. I mean, I guess just to answer those 5 games, I think they lose to Cuse. I think they beat Virginia. I think they beat Cornell. And then I think they lose to Notre Dame. And then that North Carolina game's kind of a toss-up. But I think they probably lose that game also.
I hope they lose a couple because I want that North Carolina game to mean a lot. That would be fun. As Kristav Kev said, it just means more this year. Dude, they don't have one Big Ten team in their out-of-conference schedule. Is that not a little bit nuts?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy. Like, the best team they've played is Utah or Jacksonville or St. Joe's, right? So a bunch of mid-majors. And honestly, that's a good point. Like, if they lose 4 out of those 5 games, they might not make the NCAA tournament. And that's like, you're kind of putting all your chips on the last couple games of the year, which is scary because you don't have the body of work to support an NCAA bid, especially if you're not going to win the ACC.
Let's move on. Next call.
Next, we have Jerry Ranganese calling in. He's got a take on sixes that I think will shake some shit up, but let's hear from Jerry.
Hey, guys. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Here to just want to talk a little bit about sixes. I think the business of sixes is dead after the Olympics. The PLL puts out the best product over this 2-week stint from production value and some of the best players in the world. But I think the Olympics will fall on its face and sixes will dry up outside of anybody over the age of 14. Just wanted to get your take on that. If you're involved with youth sports at all, you probably see that it's pretty hard to get anybody over the age of sophomores to show up to sixes events. The little kids love it, which is fine. A lot of reps. But from a business standpoint, I think sixes will be a fundamental failure, and we're putting way too many eggs in the basket for the Olympics. And the sport is definitely not big enough yet to outgrow our World Games, which, in my opinion, is the best version of lacrosse and the biggest celebration it can possibly be. So just wanted your guys' take. Have a great day. Crack a couple cold beers for me.
Shit, do we have any?
Cheers.
Thanks for the call, Jerry. Jerry's a legend, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
RIT guy, big personality on Twitter and social media, and he's just a great guy. Great advocate for the sport too. Aside from what he's saying about sixes and all this, like, I kind of agree with him, but I kind of don't agree with him. I think, first off, the Olympics has to be sixes, right? That was like part of the negotiations with the Olympic Committee to make lacrosse sixes. So it's not like, are you fixing something here? Right. So it's not like, everybody in the lacrosse world was like sixes is the future of the game, right? It was more of like a requirement. And I agree. Like, I think the PLL product is probably the best, sixes product we're going to see until the Olympics. And who knows, it might even be better than the Olympics. So I don't know. I do think sixes appeals to a lot of people. I think it appeals internationally. And I do think it appeals to the youth generation, right? I think it's a little more digestible game for youth players and parents and all this. So, I don't know. I don't have a solid take. I guess we're going to have to see how the Olympics pan out, but I kind of disagree with Jerry a little bit. I think it's going to be around for a little bit longer than we think.
I've got 2 things. And I'm leaning on the side of disagreeing as well. He made a point about how it is appealing to a lot of kids, which I mentioned from my experience. There's a lot of kids there. But he mentioned it from a bad business standpoint, and I disagree. I feel like a lot of us have taken business classes. A key to success in business is money flows to where kids are interested because parents pay for what their kids want. Those are a lot of buying decisions. So if kids do love sixes and they flow to that sport and it continues to grow, they're going to make money based off merchandise, ticket sales, streaming, just based off that alone. So that is a point there. The other point would be, is it going to die off? Possibly, because a lot of people who love lacrosse don't love sixes. But, and me and Hayden talked about the Dan Arestia Rabel podcast. It is a fact that this upcoming Olympics that lacrosse is going to be in is going to be the most viewed sporting event ever. It's just going to be. Just based off the eyeballs that were off the Winter Olympics, what they're projecting for the Summer Olympics in 2028, it's going to be the most people watching a sporting event ever. Does that mean they're all going to be watching lacrosse? No. But you're going to get a lot of eyeballs. And if it's a good product, it's going to be good for the sport. I don't know if sixes is going to last, but if it's popular enough, who knows?
Right. And I also agree. So if you haven't listened to the Dan Arestia and Paul Rabel podcast, you absolutely should. You know, we were talking earlier. I think it was the most important lacrosse podcast that's come out in at least the last year, just in terms of information on the PLL, where it stands, Olympics, all this stuff. And one thing in that podcast that I kind of took away was, you know, Rabel talked a lot about like the cannibalization of lacrosse, right? There's a lot of people in lacrosse who hate on sixes or hate on these other aspects of the sport. And, you know, from our perspective, that's like growth a little bit. Like, you know, we're criticizing it more than hating on it. But I think for the Olympics, right, he made a good point that, you know, if the fans of lacrosse are shitting on sixes when they're playing in LA 2028, how can you expect new fans to come and watch the game, right? If the people who love lacrosse hate this, you know, style of it. So, you know, I think we can be critical of it, and I think we absolutely should be critical. Like, it's new for everybody, but I think until 2028, we gotta try to support it. And that's probably an unpopular opinion, but for this thing to really take off and like hit big at the Olympics, people have to be behind it. And it starts with the people in the lacrosse community. So that's a wholesome way of saying, you know, I think we should wait until LA 2028 to make our final opinions on this thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. He is a face-off guy. He's a legendary face-off guy. So, like, just don't be surprised when the, you know, angry mob of face-off guys with pitchforks come to the, you know, Olympics or whatever it might be. Because, you know, I think part of it, you could say he's biased, which naturally, you know, organically speaking, he is biased. He's a face-off guy, and sixes does not account for the face-off guy. So maybe there's some of that involved. It's an interesting conversation. We could go on for a while about this, but this is college lacrosse game day, so we'll keep it moving.
Next call, we have Tucker Strings. He's talking about Coach Millman on the hot seat.
All right, it's Owen from Tucker Strings here calling in. And my question for you gentlemen is, how hot is Peter Milliman's seat at Hopkins? Do you guys think he gets canned after this season? Do you think Hopkins is just underperforming? What are you guys thinking about Hopkins? And have you ever heard of Andrew Cook? And do you think he should start in net? Thanks, guys.
Andrew Cook.
Yeah, I haven't heard that name.
Me neither.
It's Cookie Strings.
That's Cookie Strings.
That's Cookie Strings.
Confirmed.
Is he a Hopkins goalie?
He's a Hopkins goalie.
Okay. Well, maybe he should be.
He's a Hopkins goalie, stringing account, starting to grow a little bit from the social media side.
He got in a little war with RJ.
He's kind of a beast, kind of like Cookie Strings.
Well, that Hopkins net is a little wide open. So, you know, maybe we should toss him in there. And
all I can say is he's definitely a glue guy. His teammates love him. He posts content with everybody. You name him, Collison down the list after practice.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you want. You want out of a goalie.
Yeah.
Trust.
Let's talk about Milliman for a sec. Unless, Mike, you have a comment.
Yeah, no. It is about Millman, but it's just like you have to judge when people say hot seat, right? Because I actually made a list of coaches I think could be on the hot seat. I didn't put Millman, but he's definitely in the conversation. You just have to grade based off school history and expectations. Hopkins is a blue blood, so we hold them to a higher standard than most programs. They were in the tournament 2 years ago. Did they win a national championship? No. They won the first round against Lehigh and then lost to UVA in the second round in double overtime. So he has brought them back to the tournament, but last year they were 6-8. Didn't make the tournament. They lost in the first round of the Big Ten tournament, which every team in the Big Ten makes. And this year, I started off thinking he's definitely going to be in the hot seat. If he didn't have that comeback win against UVA, I think we could definitely say it. But he did, and they lost to a good Q's team after that. Hot seat for me, not yet, but we're definitely getting there. That's my opinion.
Completely agree. I'll let you go, Hayden. But his only 2 losses this year, North Carolina and Syracuse. Both good programs. Yeah, you want to win one of them. Great point. Like, if that comeback against Virginia doesn't happen, are we talking about it? I mean, the real hot seat is in Charlottesville, if we're going to talk about hot seats right now. But Hayden, any thoughts?
Yeah, Mike, I agree with you. Like, there's certainly the expectations and the pressure there. But I think the landscape has changed a little bit, and I think Hopkins is becoming a more difficult school to recruit to. It's just becoming a little less appealing, as a recruit to go to Hopkins and, go to Hopkins over some of these other Big Ten schools, these ACC schools, these Ivy League schools that all these kids are getting recruited by.
Utah,
right?
Michigan.
Like Hopkins is a very niche, lacrosse rat school. Right. But I think a lot of these other schools are catching up to that, and they just offer a little bit more in terms of, resources and athletic support. Right. We all know Hopkins is the only D1 sport there. I just think it's becoming a little bit tougher of a place to make a really good program. And I think Milliman's done a pretty good job. Obviously the past few years haven't been great, and this year's been a little rocky, but it's been pretty good. And they have a good team. They have a team that can, maybe win the Big Ten, maybe not, but a team that's going to compete with anybody.
They're going to get a shot. They're going to make the Big Ten tournament. Olson's a beast. He's even in their losses, his highlights are insane. Chavez is one of the best shooters in the nation, I would say. So,
right, and who knows? Maybe they run through the Big Ten. Maybe they beat Ohio State. Maybe they beat
Maryland,
Penn State.
I mean, a quick example of that was Rutgers last year. Weren't they brutal outside of conference, and then they went in the Big Ten and. I mean, they had some wins. I'm pretty sure that did they make it to the championship?
I'm forgetting, but Michigan did the same thing in years past.
Right.
It's a story that happens because in the Big Ten, it's everyone gets a shot, everyone gets a trophy.
Yeah. I just think it's hard to put someone on the hot seat when in reality, 4 weeks from now, if he wins the next 4 games, right, he's nowhere near the hot seat. Right. He's got his job for another couple of years. So I think when we're talking about hot seat, there has to be consistent lack of success. And you talked about Lars being on the hot seat. I don't think he's on the hot seat. I think he's the best coach in college lacrosse. If UVA let him go, who would they find better to replace him?
Yeah, it's a good point.
I don't really think anybody.
No, it's a good point. Let's move on.
Next call is coming in from Upstream Lacrosse. Prominent posting, love their content. I called in about another Baltimore squad, Loyola.
What's up, guys? Calling from Upstream here. Just wanted to give a shout out to the Loyola Greyhounds. On a 4-game win streak right now, they got Max Watkinson saving at 58% over those games. Mason Cook, Roldan's role, is an absolute stud on attack for them, filling up the score sheet. And it seems like they're really rounding the bend with their new OC, Justin Ward. I think they have a real shot at making a run in the Patriot League. Wanted to know what you guys think. Only thing holding them back is those hideous green jerseys. Thanks.
Agreed. I think the Patriot League is as wide open as it's ever been. Mm-hmm. It's a fun conference. We love it. Quint loves it. But yeah, Loyola's 4-2. Their losses are to Maryland and Hopkins. Their best wins against Towson. They beat them by 4 goals, which you got to start looking at Towson as a good team now. I mean, I got to see what happened on Saturday night against Virginia, and Towson was just better up and down. This is about Loyola, so we'll talk about them. But some good ball being played in Maryland outside of just Maryland and Hopkins.
Yeah. I think those first 2 losses against Hopkins and Maryland weren't games that Loyola was supposed to win, and I'm not surprised that they dropped those. But Dan, like you said, beating Towson and then beating up pretty good on Providence tells me a lot about Loyola. I think the Justin Ward effect is certainly coming around right now. The Patriot League's wide open. They don't really have another game on their schedule aside from Georgetown that they're going into saying, we can't win this game. And I bet they're going to Georgetown saying we're going to win this game. And, I don't know. I agree. The Patriot League's wide open. They still got Army and Navy, but, I think they're built for that. And they're a solid team. They're going to be fun to watch.
Next call.
We have our buddy Dean calling in about, I haven't listened to it, but I bet you money it's about Cuse.
Dean, Mitty back here. And whoa, these last couple were a punch in the gut. I'm a straight shooter when it comes to Cuse. And we're not the same team we were last year. No English between the lines. No Hiltz magic on the wing. We need Spalliner to step up and take control for the ACC tournament. Otherwise, he'll be playing his last game in a face mask of tears. Thank you.
They do need to step it up, but I think the Hopkins win was a good start for Cuse to get back on track. I mean, the Penn overtime win. Billy Dwan, man, I said it at the beginning of the season. He's a hack. He's
also a scorer now.
He is a scorer. 2 goals against Hop.
Yeah, I thought the big difference that I saw with Cuse against Hopkins that I didn't really see them do in their last couple games was they played fast. They played transition. They got up and down the field. They weren't afraid to attack early, hit some poles in transition. Billy Dwan had 2 goals, right? A lot of other poles and D middies were making assists or hockey assists. And I like that style for Cuse. Like, I think they're super capable of playing like that. I think the couple games before that, they got into a rut of really like settling into 6-on-6 and trying to beat teams 6-on-6, which is tough. Like, no matter how good you are, you're at a disadvantage playing 6-on-6. I think that might be the recipe for Cuse is playing fast and taking some risks. Like, they have the guys that are skilled enough to do it, and that's what I saw against Hopkins. So if they can keep that energy and upfield momentum going, I think they're going to be dangerous.
Mike, anything on Cuse?
The only thing I would say is for Hayden's recipe for success, they can take risks because they have the defense to back it up. They have the defensive coach in Odirna. They have two basically number one cover guys in Figueres and Dwan, and then McCool's playing like a stud in net as well. So you can be risk adverse if you have a defense like that.
Yeah. And I think against Hopkins, like if you watch that film, right, Syracuse got a couple easy goals, right, where they made a mistake and the ball just bounced away and they got a dunk on the crease. And that's lucky. Like I don't think that they were like steps above Hopkins in terms of freaking blanking.
You got
in
this.
terms of like skill and athleticism, but I think they just took risks and that might work for Syracuse. So I like Syracuse. I think they're going to go deep. I think they're going to be there on Final Four in Memorial Day weekend.
They got over the skid too. They hear the noise just like everybody else does, that they cannot win outside, and then they drop 2 in a row. You feel that in the locker room, and then they get 2 good wins. Penn has aged well. Penn looks really good. And then obviously they just beat Hopkins, who we just talked about, but they're a good team. So yeah, they just got to ride the wave here and go on a run.
It is so much different watching them play outside versus inside. Like they're a
There's no
totally
denying it.
different team. They look totally different.
They'd be a team I'd like to see in more neutral site games, to be honest. I love when Syracuse plays in different environments, and not because they struggle, but because they're just as big a brand in lacrosse as there is. Like, when Syracuse is doing well, the sport is just healthier. And it pains me to say that as someone who played Syracuse and lost to them for 5 years in college, some close games, but couldn't get over the hump, right, Michael? Just couldn't get over the hump.
I will say they could use a little like jersey upgrade. Like they went to their throwbacks against Hopkins, but they weren't really throwbacks.
No.
Like
the helmets were throwbacks.
Yeah, but like still they weren't like
No, it was just the helmets.
they didn't do anything special. Like when I think of Cuse, like Cuse throwbacks nowadays should be Volt.
They should be Oregon.
Yeah.
They should be the Oregon of lacrosse.
Yeah. Like New Jersey every single game.
Yeah, like mix some stuff in. They got the Nike connection. Like, why not make it fun? Because no one else is going to do that.
They have the palette of colors too.
When they came out with like orange, navy,
Royal.
Throw some Royals are throwback.
Yeah.
The throwback color. Like they were the ones who debuted the sleeveless jerseys, and those were sick for years. We love those.
Yeah.
You guys have any takeaways? That's it for Collins. But I'll go to our analyst and Brett. Do you guys have any big takeaways from the weekend outside of what was covered over the phone here by the lacrosse community?
I do have a few more hot seats if we want to talk hot seats.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Let's talk hot seats.
How about I'll throw 3 more names out. We already talked about UVA, so we don't have to get into that. But I'm going to throw 3 names out, and then if we agree, we agree to disagree, whatever. Kevin Conry of Michigan, Justin Turry of St. John's, friend of the podcast, and
Is he a friend? Is Justin a friend?
Kyle Turry is.
Okay.
And then Seth Tierney of Hofstra. Those are my 3.
So I'll first say Seth Tierney, like he's going to be at Hofstra as long as he wants, I think. He's a Team USA U20 coach or whatever it is. He is super, super well established in the lacrosse world. I think any school is lucky to have him. Again, Hofstra is an impossible school to recruit to and a really hard school to like compete with some of the schools in the region, but just nationally as well. So I don't think Seth Tierney's on the hot seat. He's been there forever. I don't know too much about Turry, so I won't speak to that. But Kevin Conry at Michigan, like that is a prime example of a guy who's probably on the hot seat. And if it isn't this year, it's probably next year if he has a season, in 2027 like he is now. Like Michigan should be a top 10 team every year. They should be. That should be the standard there. They won the Big Ten championship last year, right? There shouldn't be this steep of a drop off. Again, I think
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
And the year before that. Yep.
I think he has some time under his belt just because, like hot seats and coaching changes move slowly in college lacrosse. So it's not going to be like a quick thing. But I think one more year where he doesn't prove it, that seat's getting pretty hot.
I think Tierney, you're right. Just based off what you said, I believe you. I think he has a job for life. He's well established. Everyone knows who Coach Tierney is. But like, we grew up in a time where Hofstra was like elite. Like Hofstra was like one of the programs you talked about. You know, that Long Island Lax Fest, whatever, that Long Island Jamboree we used to play in at Hofstra. You know, some kids, you know, if you were in the championship or whatever, you got to play in the Hofstra Stadium, and it was like, oh my gosh, you know.
I had a Hofstra shirt. It was like my favorite shirt for like 4 years.
I remember that, yeah. Like ketchup stain on it for a couple of years. Yeah. But I mean, like, this year they've beaten Iona and they've beaten UMBC. They've lost to Holy Cross, Siena, St. John's, and Rutgers, of course. But like, it's like, I still think the seat is hot, is what I'm saying. Like, yes, you have a job for life, but at some point you're like, this isn't going well. And, you know, they have a lot of alumni who, like, you guys see in their locker room. I forget the donor and the namesake for the locker room.
It's so
but, like,
sick.
Yeah, it's probably as good as any. Like, their facilities are top notch. It is Hofstra. So I guess we were talking about how it's hard to recruit to Hopkins. Like, imagine Hofstra. But you are in Long Island. You should have some more resources. I guess they're competing now with more Long Island schools. You got
the barrier for entry is not, you know,
right,
Ivy League level.
Sure. Yep.
Let's call it that.
I think LIU is going to be a powerhouse one day.
That'd be sick.
I think if LIU, they don't play this year, I don't think, but LIU versus Hofstra, I'm taking the Sharks. I like the hot seat conversation.
Mike, if you had to pick one of those guys who's you know, the hottest seat, who would you say?
I agree with you. I think it's Kevin Connery. I agree with what both of you said about Hofstra. I mean, it's the history they've had. I mean, that stadium like is so fucking cool. Like, it's almost just, for me, it's a want for that team to be a top 10 program. Because it's just such a cool atmosphere. Like, the quarterfinal there's electric. And then St. John's is just, the past 3 years they're 4-11, 4-11, and then 0-14 since Turry took over. And they're in the Big East. Like, you're in the Big East. If you're gonna compete in the Big East, that can't be your record. And I know St. John's is not an easy school to recruit to. I know it is. But you're in the Big East. So St. Bonaventure
brand
did it
is also growing
with Randy Mearns. I don't think that's an easy school to recruit to either. And they got rid of him because they were being subpar, and they're in the bottom of the A10 every year. The only other thing I would add outside of hot seat conversation, just real quick, this is a fun hypothetical. This is a future. If Notre Dame and Richmond stay where they are, like don't lose and keep winning, they play each other April 4th. It's Lacrosse Day in Chicago. They'd be number 1 and number 2, or number 1 and number 3 if it stays the same. But that's a neutral site game in Chicago. Big event.
Is that
Richmond,
at Northwestern?
I think it is. I didn't see where it just says Lacrosse Day in Chicago.
Yeah. I'm asking if JP can join. He can't. Can he?
No,
not when we're recording.
I don't think so.
I would love for him to join. And
I mean,
say hi.
Shout out JP.
Yeah, JP deserves all the credit in the world. I'd love for him to come on. I bring him up because he's in Chicago, and I think he said this game's going to be at Northwestern, that facility they've been playing football games at recently. Like, I might fly to Chicago, see some buddies, and go watch this game, meet JP in person. But JP's been crushing it. If you've noticed, our reels have suddenly just become super professional. It's because of JP. He's done a ton for us, and all we've had to provide in exchange is just free merchandise, which is unfortunate. But I think that speaks to how much of a lax rat he is, and he loves the game as much or more than we do. So
shout out JP. But just to confirm, it's at Northwestern Medicine Field at Martin Stadium. I believe that's the one.
Medicine Field. The medicine game on Medicine Field.
Yeah.
We all got to go.
Yeah, we do. We do. For the love of the game. Thanks all. That's the end of our call-in segment. Brett, editorial comments before we move on? We're all wearing merchandise. I'll say that.
Yeah, I think it's starting to kind of pile in. Everyone's getting their orders. People are sending us pictures. Continue to check out the shop at shop.collegeacrossgameday.com. You guys will probably see some more content as more of us get our stuff and we start, putting stuff out and pictures. Maybe we'll do like a couple of funny videos or something. But it always helps support our brand. Allows us to invest more in the app and so forth. So appreciate you guys repping it and just keep buying shit off the store. So appreciate it.
Mike's wearing the Beachcomber sweatshirt. Brett's wearing the pastel hat. Hayden's got the trucker on. I have the Brown State shirt and a hat that I customized for myself because I like the colors. This is the Brown State shirt. I like brown. I just love their colors. I think them and Tufts have sick colors. I have a Tufts, off-white Tufts shirt over there. Love their colors. Don't know much about Tufts, just love their colors. So I'm repping them. Cheers. Let's move on to our next segment brought to you by Hackies. It's nice in Boston right now. It's finally starting to change. I think last year I opened up an episode saying, conference play begins and we start practicing in shorts instead of, full sweats. I can't help think about being on the beach, being outside, just anywhere where it's nice and throwing the ball around. Specifically, the one memory that I always come back to is in Nantucket on the beach with Hackies. We played 2-on-2 for about 30 minutes. It was
to start.
30 minutes of 2-on-2. Let's not, that's work on the beach.
Yeah.
But that was 30 minutes 2-on-2. What we did for hours on end when we did our little Nantucket trip. We sound so privileged saying we went to Nantucket, but let's not act like, you guys listening aren't going to nice places too. So yeah, we spoiled ourselves. We went to Nantucket, sue us. And, we played this little game. We don't even have a name for it. We would just play essentially taps with Hackies. The rule is it's like all quick sticks. So you're in a box of 4 guys. You can only quick stick it. You can't, the rule is if you can touch it, you can catch it.
But it's like horse.
Yes. So if you drop one and throw a bad pass that no one can catch, you get a letter.
Right. And everybody votes on it. Usually it's pretty obvious, but sometimes, if I throw a pass and it's like within reach of Dan, but he drops it.
Or chicken arms it.
Then it goes to a vote.
Yeah.
You got to try to get to everything.
Just make sure that you have the rules set because there will be arguments.
There will be. Well, now let's get into our our segment actually brought to you by Hackies, which is the Hack of the Week. We had a few good nominees this week. You can only choose one, though. Michael, please reveal our Week 5 Hack of the Week.
Yeah, I know we've been talking about Richmond a lot. Had to pick a guy from Richmond. Just had a great game. It's going to Hunter Smith, who, me specifically, talk about him a lot, but he gets a lot of time on this podcast, but for good reason. He's the best defenseman on the people's number 1 team in the country. I think they're number 2 or number 3 right now, actually, in the polls, but that is debatable. But they just had a massive win over Georgetown. I mean, Georgetown, again, is my father's preseason team to win the national championship. I'm going to say that all year, especially if they don't make it. It'd be pretty funny. But they're a great team, and that was a huge win for Richmond, continuing to stay undefeated, stay number 3, number 2 in the polls. And their defense played lights out. I mean, Hunter Smith had 1 goal. Yeah, close defenseman with a goal. It was actually a 10-man ride goal, shot it from like 60 yards out. One of those, which is sometimes looks easy. It's very difficult to do. 4 GBs and 3 call turnovers. Great stat line. Obviously, takes the best attackman every game. He had one of the Connor brothers, who's a very difficult cover. But, I mean, this guy was a preseason Hack of the Year nominee for sure. Was going to get time on this podcast again as Hack of the Week. He's been the cover guy for Richmond since his freshman year. I actually played him as a 5th year at Hobart. And I was actually speaking to, I'm not going to name him, but a Hobart alumni recently who was covered by him when we played him that game. And we were talking recently, and he was telling me how shocked he was because he was kind of flying under the radar at the time. Was a freshman. I don't know if he started the first game as a Spider, but kind of as the season progressed, got more and more time, and then was their cover guy by end of the year. And he was just talking about how it was shocking how good this kid was as a freshman. He's been a baller since day one at Richmond. 2025 second team All-American, first team A10, A10 Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's going to be a first round draft pick in the PLL. I don't have any say in that, but he's definitely an elite coverman, and there's only so many elite covermen every single season in college lacrosse. There's only a few who are that tier, and Hunter Smith is definitely up there. So congrats, Hack of the Week, Hunter Smith.
High praise for Hunter Smith. We did ask for, when we were doing the interview with Kevin Creel last week, we were kind of going through names at Richmond, and one of them, the idea was to have Hunter Smith on, and the feedback we got was, you guys, you don't want to talk to Hunter, which pretty much means like this guy's he has one job, which is cover the ball, and he's a nail gun. So Hunter Smith, not only a hack, a nail gun. Way to go, Hunter. Moving on to our Week 6 slate, brought to you by East Coast Eyes, CLG Pick'em, powered by East Coast Die. All right, let's do this. 10 games, Week 6 Pick'em, powered by East Coast Dies. How it works: every week we provide 10 games. You choose the outright winner and the winner against the spread. If you get the winner right, you get 5 points. If you get the spread right, you get 10 points. If you get both of them right, you get 2 bonus points. And if you get all the winners correct, you get 25 bonus points. The highest possible score you can get is 195. Our winner, Dos X2, last week. How many did he have?
47, I think.
146, which is a lot.
More than the previous week.
Yes.
Which was tough.
That's a lot of points. Our national leader right now is Derek Madonna, brother of Lance Madonna, who was the first ever guest on College Lacrosse Game Day. Derek, Hobart alum, played at Richmond his 5th year. One of our good friends. I was watching Lax with him on Saturday. I asked him, Derek, like, how are you, do you have a magic ball? Like, what's going on? He's like, dude, I don't know. I don't know. He's just hot. He's just so hot. Derek Madonna's hot.
In every way.
Yes. You should see him with his shirt off. He is hot. We're going to go through these games quick. No guest picker this week. It's all CLG. All CLG. We do not have spreads. We're recording on a Monday night because youth coaching is coming up fast. So we're making do for the fans, for the lacrosse community. Mike, we're starting with you. This game's at noon. Maybe one of the better games on the slate this week. Not a strong slate. I'll be honest. Not a strong slate. You're probably going to learn about a lot of middle of the pack teams this week as we go through this. We got Princeton at Yale Saturday at noon.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first game here is like not terrific. I mean, I would think Princeton would win by 4+ goals at least in this game. I do think it's going to be tighter than people will give Yale credit for. It's the first Ivy League game. Yale has a great culture and history of winning. And they got talent all over the place. But, I mean, Yale just had a good win over time against a good Fairfield team. We talked about it last week. We expected Yale to win, but Fairfield's better than they've been in the past. So that's a good win. But Princeton has just turned into the wagon that we expected preseason. They're going on an absolute run. They won 4 in a row, 3 of which were at top 10 wins. They got studs all over the field. I mean, we talked last week about their defense. Ryan Croddick, hack of the week last week. Their cover guy, Jack Stahl, is just locking people down. In their offense, I mean, you could name 5-6 guys probably off the top of your head, Hayden, just with all the power they have. And I think, in all honesty, their offense really hasn't been doing anything crazy until last week. They put 20 on Rutgers, and that's a good defensive team. You could talk all the shit you want about Rutgers. They always have a good defense. So my last note is Princeton has beaten Yale 6 times in a row. And I do not see this being the year that Yale beats Princeton. Yeah. I think this is an easy one.
I agree with you, Mike. I think Princeton's arguably the best team in the country. I think they are the best team in the country when they put it together. I think they can be if they do it every single week.
Hayden, going to you next. Towson at Villanova. Towson's red hot. This game's at noon on Saturday.
Yeah, I really like Towson right now. I think they're going to go on a little bit of a tear. Obviously, Mikey Weissar, stud. Russo is also a stud at attack. I think he's just as good, and maybe not just as good, but he's certainly capable of playing as good, if not better, than Weissar in any given game. Their third attackman, Joaquin Villagomez, big 6'6".
I think it's Joaquin.
Joaquin Villagomez.
You try. Yep.
Villanova versus Villagomez.
Joaquin Villagomez. That makes sense. He is a beast. Like, number 26, big righty, has an absolute hammer of a shot. 6'6". He's like a spitting image of Brendan Sunday, if you remember him back for Towson a couple years ago.
That's a name.
He's an Albanian Giga Chad.
But I like Towson a lot. Like I said, I think they're going to go on a tear. I think they got the guys to do it. We talked a little bit about the Virginia game. They were better up and down the field. They were bigger. They were more athletic. Maybe not bigger, but they matched size with Virginia, which is saying something. I like Towson winning this game by a lot. I bet the spread's like 4.5. I bet they win by like 8.
Villanova did beat Penn State, so we can't sleep on them, but it's a strong take, and Towson's as hot as anyone right now, as hot as Derek Madonna. Next game, Brett, we're going to you. We got Colgate at Bucknell, the Patriot League, man. The Patriot League.
We were really impressed with Colgate early in the year. Like, when we watched them play, they were really impressive.
We're coming out of last year too, right? I mean,
exactly. They just played good teams early on. They've had a really strong schedule, I think, for them. Freddie Fowler is on top of the leaderboard right now in terms of scoring. He's really balanced. Obviously, Hunter Druin, who we know, close behind him. They tend to play high-scoring games against a Bucknell team who shoots the ball quite a bit. Just looking at some stats, they take like 50 shots a game, Bucknell. So, I think I don't think it's gonna be as much of a shootout. I think that Colgate will beat them like, 13-9 or something like that. But I don't know. There's no quality win from Bucknell other than Lehigh, which is impressive still. But I think Colgate gets the better of Bucknell by 4 or 5.
Very insightful, Willie.
Gunning for an analyst position. I see.
We'll see.
How'd you prompt ChatGPT for that summary?
Actually, what I used primarily was the College Lacrosse Game Day schedule feature.
What a plug!
If you
If you go onto the teams page, you can just check everyone's schedule.
And then I did regrettably use Inside Lacrosse for stats because that's not part of our app yet. But yeah.
Good take, Willie. I am next. Here we go. I have Navy at Hopkins. This game's at 1 o'clock on Saturday, no spread. I'm just going to give you the data, just like Willie did, and just give you my opinion. So we know Navy's won this game in the past. It's always been competitive. It's oftentimes a weekday game. It's interesting that they schedule this one on a Saturday, which to me says Hopkins is like, we got to take this one seriously. That's what it says to me, is Navy's a contender, and we need to prepare for this game like it's any other. We can't play them on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. So Navy's 4-2. They have wins over Penn State. They have losses to Towson and BU, both good programs. They play Jacksonville on Tuesday, so this will be, after we release the episode. We'll see what happens. I think Jacksonville could win that game, so we'll keep an eye on that. Hopkins, 4-2. We're talking about Milliman on the hot seat. My take is not so fast. Their only losses this year, even despite all this hot seat talk, is to UNC and Syracuse, who are both, top 5 teams right now. Hopkins, they got wins over Towson, Loyola, and Virginia, which is pretty darn good. My favorite guy on Navy is AJ Marsh. He's a defender, number 11. They do this thing sometimes where if Navy wins a faceoff, once they get possession, they'll actually keep a guy, either the faceoff guy or the defensive midfielder who's part of that faceoff. They'll keep them on sides. And when the ref says possession, AJ Marsh will go flying down the field on offense. And he'll just be a trailer with a long pole. He has a gun. He scores goals. He can do that. He's also a beast on defense. He causes a bunch of turnovers, picks up ground balls. I love him. I think Navy playing this game on a Saturday, this is, they got their Patriot League stuff going on. All those games are going to be competitive all season long. I think Navy goes in and they beat Hopkins, and they really put Milliman on the hot seat. This is a game for Navy to go take. I'm always been high in the military academies. I like Navy to win a tight one by 1 or 2 goals. Really tight game, but I think the midshipmen have everything they need to get this done. Back to my host position. Mike, good one. Typically a good one. Maybe not this year. We got Virginia at Maryland, 1 o'clock.
I mean, you said it. Typically, historically, you circle this game every year. This is going to be a banger. You could put this game in a neutral site. In regular season, put this at a neutral site just because it's a big-time matchup. But, I mean, would you think that at this point in the year, UVA would be 3-3 and Maryland would be 2-3 heading into this matchup? No, which is absolutely insane. I think that even though that's the case, they both kind of have meh records and they're under expectations, at least record-wise at this point in the season. I still think Maryland's a way better team. They've shown that they can be, and I just think Tillman's culture and X's and O's and just prowess is just, this team's going to win by at least 3 goals, I think, against UVA. I'm obviously very low on UVA. They're talented, but there's something off in Charlottesville. I don't know what. But I do think what makes this interesting, if not anything else, would be the history between these two teams. They obviously do not like each other. For people that don't know, UVA beat Maryland in the national championship in 21. The next year, Maryland beats UVA in the semifinals. And then in 24, Maryland beats UVA in the semifinals again in the playoffs. So, I mean, they have a history in the last 5 years of playing each other on the biggest stage. And there's still kids on the team that have had that experience. So I expect it to be a fun game, but Maryland's going to pull it out.
I love it. It just wouldn't be shocking if either or even both these teams made a run. So we'll see. This could start that run for either program. Hayden, Harvard at Pennsylvania. 1 o'clock Saturday.
This is going to be a great game. This is going to be a lot closer than people think. I think a lot of people are high on Harvard right now, as they should be. Harvard's a very talented team, but so is Penn. And I think Penn's a little more battle-tested than Harvard. They've played, 4 top 20 teams, right? They're 3-3 right now. Their 3 losses are to Georgetown, UNC, and Syracuse by a combined 6 goals. All right, they just beat Villanova. I think, when they were looking at their schedule, before the season started, I think if they were saying, if we can come out of here 3-3, we're in a good position to make a run. And that's what they did. Again, Harvard is super talented. But I think they're up as high as number 4 in the country right now. Their best wins against Syracuse. Granted, they played Syracuse in their first outdoor game at home. So I don't want to put as much, they did beat the number 1 team in the country at the time, but I think Syracuse has dropped a little bit. And then other than that, their best game has been against Michigan or Colgate or Providence. Whoever out of those 3 is the best. So Harvard's a great team, but Penn is scary, man. They're a top 20 team. They're well coached. Griffin Skane, is making a case to be a first-team All-American. They got the guys to do it. I think this game's going to be close. It's at Penn. I could see Penn winning this game, but, if I'm making a safe bet, I'm going to say Harvard wins by 1, maybe an OT.
I would have Penn covering, I think. I think Penn's going to be a 2.5 goal underdog or something like that. Brett, you have the CLG game of the week. And that is, we don't just hand it to the top RPI teams. We hand it to the grittiest matchups we have on the entire slate. And I think this is it. You're looking at two teams who just did historic things last week. Yep. We have Lafayette at Holy Cross, games of 1.
Yeah, no, both teams coming off of big wins. I think just marginally, I think the Lafayette win over Army was bigger. I think just for lacrosse in general, but the program obviously huge. Holy Cross just beat Colgate. I mean, Lafayette has one bad loss to Drexel. Everybody else hadn't really played anybody big. Their goalie obviously was huge for them, Joe Doherty. He had 19 saves last week against Army. It's like the Ricky Bobby saying when you got a cougar in the car, But I don't think that they're getting punched. I think they're doing the punching. So I don't know. I'd say it's going to be a tight game. I think it will be a really fun game to watch, actually, just to see how both of these teams respond. I don't know what's going to be on, probably ESPN Plus, but, the two screens that we have, we're probably going to have this one on at some point.
Yes.
100%. Holy Cross is also great against the spread this year. They're either 6-1 against the spread or 7-0. I don't know. Holy Cross against the spread has proven to be a good bet this year.
And they haven't been on the pick'em for us.
No.
So I'd be interested. I mean, I wish we had the data to show how people pick Holy Cross, but we will this week.
Welcome to Pick'em, Holy Cross.
I've got a fun statistic as well for Holy Cross. Just because, Holy Cross is a CLG game of the week. That's insane. I want you guys to guess. When is the last time?
Okay.
When is the last time Holy Cross had a record above 500? Guess the year.
Like at any point in the year?
No. Like end of the year.
Okay.
I mean, growing up, they're pretty good.
2006.
8.
Holy crap.
Above 500. They were 500 one time, like a few years ago, like maybe 5 years ago. Above 500. Holy Cross.
Wow.
Who's the coach in Division 3? What's his name again?
Andy Dick.
Yeah. I forget his character's name, but is he the coach there? Who's the coach?
Yeah, that's a pretty incredible stat, Mike.
It is. Pretty
incredible. Just one more in there as well. Holy Cross has already reached their win total from last season. Total win total from last year.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Historic.
Yeah. Let's go Crusaders. They're Crusaders, man. What a mascot.
I know.
What a mascot. You're never canceling that. Crusaders.
No.
I love that. All right. Next game, we got Bryant at Albany. This one's at 2. American East game. I'm taking it. American East game. I like this conference. I really do. I think it's competitive up and down. Albany is a great program. They are a great program. I watched almost the entirety of that game last week. They played my alma mater, and Hobart tied at halftime. Hobart fought hard. I think Albany pulled away, won by a few goals in the end. But they're a good team, and as Quint said on one of our earlier episodes, they had a bad loss earlier in the season against Penn. They've learned from it, and they've continued to get better. So they're 2-3 right now. They actually played Georgetown on Tuesday, so we'll see how that game goes. I'd have to assume Georgetown's going to win that one after a tough loss against Richmond on Saturday. But their two guys are Silas Richmond and Jackson Palem. Jackson Palem, son of Maddie, who we would love to have on this podcast. If you don't know Maddie Palem, he is the ref. He is one of the more famous refs I know in any sports league. I can't think of any, like Ed Hockley in football. I really can't think of any famous active referees in any other sport. So shout out Matty Palem. But Jackson's having a great season. Albany's the real deal. They have losses to Penn, Cornell, and UMass, who are all good programs. So Bryant, I feel like in years past, we've talked a lot about Bryant, and they've always had some guys who we know, just names we bring up on a weekly basis who are scoring goals. They lost a lot of those guys. I looked at some of their statistics this year. I don't recognize a lot of guys. They lost to Merrimack, among others, this year. They're 2-3. I really do think Bryant, though, they have a tendency of when they get themselves into conference play, whether this is old school in the NEC or this is new school in the American East, they just find ways to win games. I think they're great at game planning. Yes, they have a different coach. They don't have Pressler anymore. That's who we played, Mike Mert Hobart against Bryant, but I think they're smart. This coach has won a conference championship before. He's been in big games. I think they find a way to slow it down and make this thing close. I think they could win, but they definitely cover. I'm going to take double Bryant in this game. Next game, Mike, Delaware at Richmond, A10 action. This one's at 3 o'clock, so after the bulk of the slate.
My take here is that Richmond is going to beat Delaware more than Maryland just beat Delaware, which was 5 goals.
Welcome
this
to
past
the
weekend. welcome to the A10. Delaware's first game in the A10. And before this season, I mean, as an A10 fan, I was very excited for the A10 to join. I mean, they have been great the past 5 years. Historic program. Just another great mid-major to add. They've just been having a down year. I don't know why. They just haven't really been able to put it together yet. Maybe they're young, haven't really been able to tune in too much to Delaware games specifically. But their lone win is over St. John's, and they only won by a goal. I already talked about St. John's coach being on the hot seat, so obviously that's not a great win. They do have a tough schedule. They played some of the big boys for sure. And there's no denying that Delaware is going to give Richmond their best shot. Everyone knows, especially the mid-majors, once you start conference play, you're 0-0. You're not getting an at-large bid for the most part. You got to win your conference. So you start 0-0. Delaware has a chance to beat the number 3 team in the country and start 1-0 in conference play. I still think they're going to lose by a good amount of goals just because of how good Richmond is, and Delaware's having a down year. But that's my take on that game. And then I do think, for future reference for Richmond, they're gonna get scared in the A10. There's going to be 1 or 2 games that get real tight that they might not pull out.
Yes.
I just don't think this is going to be the one.
Yes. And St. Joe's cracked that top 20. They're doing some good things that we haven't paid close attention to.
UMass as well.
Yes, UMass.
A10 could be a 2-bid league.
Possibly.
Yeah.
If Richmond doesn't win it.
Right.
UMass,
man. I mean, we talked about in the shot clock. What are they, 7-1? They've won 7 games in a row.
I think in order for Richmond, for it to be a 2-bid league, it'd have to be Richmond losing in the championship. But I do think they would have to be undefeated until the championship. And they'd have to lose to either UMass or St. Joe's. That's the only way they'd get in at large.
Yeah.
Sadly enough.
Last game. This is the nightcap. This is the best one of the weekend. UNC at Penn State, 6:30 p.m. on Saturday. I believe this is a neutral site. I believe it's
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yes, which does it say a location on their website?
It does not. It's
Okay.
a Crown Lacrosse Classic.
I believe it's at that stadium. I think there's been a number of neutral site games over the years. I think the ACC tournament was there.
Crown Lacrosse Club. What is that? Is it a new title game? Is it a trophy?
Title game.
Trophy game?
I don't know. I don't know the history of it. We need someone.
We need Quint.
Yeah, we need someone to tell us what that means. But great game. Really good game. UNC's top 5 team in the country. I think Penn State, they're making their case. I think they're probably ranked top 15. I think they are a top 10 team. They've had some bad losses, right? They're 4-2. They had a bad loss to Villanova early, and they had a bad loss to Navy. But they just walloped Cornell 19-7, which, we were talking about some of the games. We didn't really mention this game. That's a big time win for Penn State. Right, that's the first loss that Cornell's had in a long time. Penn State looked great in that game. They're capable of beating anybody, right? They beat Cornell, they beat Princeton earlier, which says a lot. They're also capable of losing to anybody. But I like this Penn State team. I think they're battle tested. UNC, mentioned it a little bit last week. I think they're a little fragile. I still think they're a great team, but I don't know. You put them on a field with Penn State. I think Penn State just looks a little more physically imposing. I think their defense is a little tougher. Just the way they play is a little bit scrappier, a little more, I don't want to say effort, but a little more intensity, I guess. So I think this is going to be a close game. I could see Penn State winning this, and if they do, they're going to be a top 10 team, and they're going to be right back in the conversation of returning to Memorial Day weekend. I did it last week too in the pick'em. I don't know what you guys picked in the Cornell-Penn State game, but I picked Penn State winning and covering. I'm going to do it again. I like what they did last week, and I think they're rolling.
How many pick'em points do you have last week?
I had a lot. I had like 125 or something.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like top 30 or something.
Just a quick note in the game as well. Cornell's actually lost 2 in a row. Richmond and then Penn State. Wasn't their first loss.
Right. Oh, good point. Sorry.
That doesn't take away from the fact that Penn State beat them 20-7 or whatever it was, 19-7. I mean, that's a statement game.
And maybe it says something about Cornell too. I know they're not on our slate this week, but it's tough. You win a national championship, you lose a lot of guys, and then you kind of come into the season with a handful of the guys that were there, but a lot of new guys too. And that first loss can be pretty like exposing. And I think they lost a little bit of confidence, especially in that game against Penn State. So, be interesting to see how Cornell bounces back. Obviously, they're a great team, but, are they a top 10 team? I don't know.
They play Brown this weekend on Saturday at home, so we'll see how that game goes. That's our slate. Play along. Click the link. Go play. It's in the bio of the episode on both YouTube and Spotify. Hayden's getting a mic check right now because he has a tendency of talking over the mic instead of into it. You just put
That
your
sound better?
You can put your mouth around it if you want.
It's all the same thing.
Yeah, it's all the same thing. Well, thank you guys. This was a fun one. Sorry for no guests. We figured we'd slow it down, take a break, and really give your own thoughts and also hear from you via call-ins. So continue to call in all season long. Very easy to do. You just got to leave a direct message via Instagram, record a voice message, send it to us. We'll play it as long as we think it's relevant and worth talking about. Thank you for those who did call in this week. Jerry Ragnese, great calling, very opinionated. God bless you, Hayden.
God bless.
Great advocate for our game. Sounded like he was in Disney World. Yeah.
I feel like he was like at a fair or something.
Yeah.
Maybe he was at Disney World. We got to ask. We got to message him.
And we did, I did look in the fridge behind me. There are hazy IPAs, but that fridge has been off for quite a while. So they're probably skunked.
Sound noise.
Probably like 40% fermented alcohol now.
It's probably pretty good.
Yeah. They're like mixed drinks.
As long as they're wet, you know?
Hayden's going to be one-eyeing in his computer.
Thanks all. Enjoy the games. Cheers.